Hello, my name is Elliot of TallNerdTV and welcome to the draw for round 2 of the Iefsa Cup. Now, we had 4 teams progress through round 1 last time. We have 4 new teams joining us for round 2. I'm going to do it slightly differently this time. I'm going to give a sort of look at each team before they're drawn and then do the draw for all of the matches for round 2. So we have 8 teams in all. So we're going to get started here and look at team number 1, which is Jay Forker. Now, I've got a pretty good feeling about his defence. It's pretty solid in theory. Much of it will depend on how Chelsea bounce back after their defeat against Leicester. They've got a tricky away trip to Watford, of course. Just to mention, of course, Jay Forker actually overcame Hesh Hambazaza in round 1. That's the reason why he's here in round 2. We move on to the next team. Jason UK 17 is a new entry in the competition. Everton had a disappointing result against Tottenham, losing 6-2, of course. Whether that means Bernard will get a start at Burnley, particularly just because of the obviously extra rotation that is applied during the festive period. Who knows? But Jorginho is one to watch as well. Normally posts pretty good underlying numbers, so it's a pretty good player in Iefsa terms. So the third team we have in the draw is, whoopsie daisy, just skipped loads, CJ Radoon. He beat Neil Thurman in round 1. He hasn't got any marquee players as such, and no real big names that really pop out at you, but Javier Hernandez is still on a pretty good run of form despite West Ham's defeat to Watford, which I mentioned in the previous video. He got a pretty good run in the last sort of 4 or 5 games. Iwobi might be one who could see some game time as well, particularly with Mkhitaryan being out injured for the next 6 weeks. He broke his metatarsal. News came out today of that. So the next team that we have is Roto Wire Andrew, who won a very close game in the Roto Derby in round 1. It was 88.9 to 87.9, so he won by 1 point. He's got probably, I would think, one of the strongest teams in the whole competition in this particular round. If you just look at the forward talent, but I would suggest the defence would be tricky to score some points from. By and large, it should struggle, really, you would think, looking at them with games at Man City and West Ham and Southampton, and yeah, it might not be particularly pretty. In our next game, Gary Irwin will be playing. We don't know who, but he's a new entry in this competition as well. He's got the number 1 goalkeeper, of course, in Iefsa, in Joe Hart. He's got, I would suggest, actually, Wolves have a trip to Fulham, so Bolly might be a good shout for some defensive points here. If this turns into a shootout, though, in terms of like who scores more goals, assists, things like that, I would suggest that maybe he would struggle to qualify. Probably his main player in this regard would be Robert Snodgrass, who, yes, is on good form still, but you don't necessarily want to rely on just him to bring in the points, because West Ham as a whole maybe still showing signs of inconsistency as evidenced by the defeat against Watford, like I mentioned. So the next team is Fantasy Yamar. Again, another new entry in the competition. Now, Jamie Vardy is on this particular team. He's got a freakish record of scoring against the big teams. That continued against Chelsea. Will it continue against Man City? Of course, it could be a case of beware the wounded animal. Manchester City might be, they might be fired up after their defeat against Crystal Palace. They might come out all guns blazing against Leicester and really make them toil. But who knows? And then you've got Dele Alli, of course, who is in fine form. He's got a home game against Bournemouth. If he plays the full 90, could see some decent points returned there. Now, our next team, FPL MNOP, who also progressed from round 1. He beat Tom Sunderland in his round 1 match. He will probably be the underdog in whatever game he's drawn into in this one. He's got some tough fixtures pretty much up and down the squad. No one who really jumps out at me and thinks they will kind of take whatever game they're in by the scruff of the neck and score a boatload of points. So it'd be tricky for him to qualify, but then I would have said the same in round 1 as well. And then we come to Ben Dinnery, the final team. Again, another new entry. He may have Marcus Rashford as the MVP of this squad, but I would not take that defence too lightly. I would suggest that's probably the best defence in the competition in this particular round. Stones as well. John Stones has been playing centre midfield for Man City recently, so he could be quite interesting to kind of follow stats wise. Just because he's playing out of position, he'll get more passes, he might intercept more passes, things like that. So his underlying stats should post pretty well over the next sort of few weeks or so. So anyway, that's all the teams. So I've got my hat again as per usual, and I'm going to draw each team out. You can see they're all written on pieces of paper in there. I can't see who's who, but I'm going to draw them out one by one, and we'll have our 4 matches for round 2. So here's piece of paper number 1, and we have FPL MNOP first of all, and he will be playing Ben Dinnery. So as I've just discussed, he might well be the underdog, particularly against a good team. Ben, I think, has a very strong team, might be difficult to beat, but you never know. We'll draw the next match here. We have Roto Wire Andrew, conqueror of Gotti in the Roto Derby, and he will be joined by Jay Forker. Jay Forker 11. That's our next game. Moving on to the third one. Penultimate game of the round. We have Jason UK 17. And he will be playing against Fantasy Yamar. So Ryan gets a trip away to Jason UK to Kentucky. I hear it's nice this time of year. And that means the final game should be, yep, there's one, CJ Radoon. And the final team out of the draw is Gary Irwin. So there you go. There you have it. All your 4 matches for round 2 of the Iefsa Cup. They will be played during the Boxing Day matches of this week. I hope you all have a lovely Christmas. If you're watching this before or after or during Christmas Day, I hope you have a lovely one. And I hope you enjoy, or hope you have success in your fantasy teams, whatever they may be, in FPL or Fantrax or what have you. I will see you again at the end of the week for the next round of weekend matches on Box to Box Score. So until then, bye bye for now.